A bloodbath, salary cap bloodbath up in Buffalo for the Bills. What does that mean for the Jets and other NFL teams? I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log on to JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. This seemed like a time. I wasn't planning on doing any videos tonight, but this seemed like a timely or a perfect time or timely post to do in regards to the salary cap. Free agency is coming. Every year I see and hear some of the same things repeated by fans in regards to free agency and the salary cap. And I thought it might be able to be a good idea to go over some of that stuff now. And I listen, I say all the time, I am no cap expert. I wouldn't want to try to be a cap expert. I do not envy those who are cap experts because it's a very complex formula, or it's a lot of moving parts that impact the cap. That's why you can go to multiple different websites and find multiple different claims and teams of how much space a team has. For example, the Jets right now, I believe it was Rich Cimini. Somebody tweeted the other day the Jets, or just within the last day or two, the Jets have just over 20 million in cap space. I think 23 was the number I saw, but I go to Over the Cap, which is sort of our go-to site, and they claim it's 20. Another site claimed 23. So they're in that ballpark. They're in the 20 million ballpark. But what we saw with the Buffalo Bills yesterday, we saw them cut 4, 5, 6 guys. And there are two different discussions to be had. I raised the point after the moves, kind of sarcastically. I said, oh, look at the Bills making all these moves to get under the non existent salary cap that no one ever has to really worry about. Because we hear it all the time. The cap is fake. The cap doesn't exist. The cap, blah, 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 blah. As we saw yesterday in Buffalo, the cap is real. The cap does exist, and teams have to get under it. Now, we can talk about how good the players were that Buffalo let go. Are the fans upset? Were they the right moves anyway? Was it time to move on? Fine. That's all fine and good. But again, that is an entirely different conversation. That's discussing where these guys are in their careers and how they're revered by fans. That's not why they were let go. It's not some amazing coincidence that these players were released a few days before free agency kicks off with the Bills. They were sitting at, I believe, 40 million over. They reworked Von Miller. They let go of Jordan Poyer. A few other guys. They traded a backup lineman. So they made a bunch of moves to clear space. So is the salary cap real? Yes. Is it malleable? Yes. Very malleable. But if you move money around and keep kicking money down the road, eventually it catches up with you. So it is a good idea to manage the cap as best you can and not put yourself in a situation where you're sitting there one day and thinking, we've got to dump 7 or 8 guys who make pretty good money right now. Because chances are you're going to get rid of a guy or two who you like, but you have to move on from. So is the cap real? Yes. Does that mean it can't be worked and manipulated? No, it doesn't. And I said this years ago, I always say to people, why isn't Amari Cooper a Dallas Cowboy right now? Like, that dude is a stud. The Cowboys signed him to big money and he produced and they loved him. But it got to a point where they were like, we have too many guys making too much money. As much as we like you, Amari Cooper, we got to let you go. And he's gone. And it doesn't happen a ton, but you do see times, as yesterday with Buffalo, as you saw with Amari Cooper, you see with the Saints all the time. They just got Michael Thomas, and I get, or his deal may have expired, but the Saints are sort of the poster child for these teams to keep kicking the can down the road. And people think, oh, well, see, that just proves it's not real. But it is, because, again, eventually you're going to get to a spot where you got to let guys go. So as far as the Jets, they're sitting at 23 million. How can they create more money? Listen, again, you don't want to rework a bunch of guys. You especially don't want to rework an old guy like a CJ Mosley type, who, will probably be gone, within the next, I would imagine within the next anywhere from 12 minutes to 12 months. CJ Mosley won't be a Jet anymore. So I don't know if you kick that can down the road, you can restructure his deal, which according to Over the Cap saves you $10.5 million in cap space, which the Jets would love. But that $10.5 million in cap space, let's see, that $10.5 million in cap space, you get that now, but then you kick money down the road. You're going to owe CJ Mosley more money later when he's gone. He's not here, and you're still going to be paying him. But a few guys they can save significant cap space on. Again, I'm not saying they should do this per Over the Cap. They would save 10.5 on Mosley, 10.6 on Quinnen. Apparently, Aaron Rodgers would only free up 1.5. John Franklin Myers, who I think they should extend. I think John Franklin Myers is a guy you should be working to re-sign right now. He saves you 9. DJ Reed saves you 7. Again, that's just on a restructured deal, an extension. You might be able to create even more. Alan Lazard, who again he's gone after this year unless he blows up. He saves you 6 million. Do you really want to restructure his deal and end up paying him further into the future after he leaves? That wouldn't be a great idea. Uzama's already gone. So there are some guys, there are some deals that can be restructured. There are some players who could be cut or let go. And I don't, you can only designate one guy as a post June 1st cut. So everything else would have to be pre-June. CJ Mosley would save you 11 again. And I'm not saying these guys are getting cut. I'm just pointing out the guys who would save you enough money that a significant amount of cap space. JFM, again, they should extend him. He would save you 7 if you cut him. DJ Reed, extend him 2. He would save you 6. Again, just extend those guys. Tyler Conklin would save you 5. There are some dead money hits, but you're paying the money no matter what. You're saving a little bit or you're saving nothing. What we got? We got Damage says, don't use cap space for a number 2. Fix the line. Well, it depends on who, really. If you can get Calvin Ridley, who we've talked about quite a bit, I wouldn't mind that. He's a guy who would be worth spending on. A lot of the other receivers, I wouldn't spend big money on. I would go for sort of a bargain guy who maybe you're looking for a guy who might bounce back, who's, had a couple of down years. And I'm just talking like camp body. I'm not saying bring a guy in and promise him a spot. But I think if you're going to spend big, go after Ridley. Anything other than that, get a mid-tier guy or 2, and then address it in the draft. But don't spend big on a number 2 outside of Ridley. So that's basically where the Jets are. They're at 20. They can pick up a ton more with restructures and even more, if they cut some guys. So there are ways to get to a better place salary cap wise. Again, the Bills thing last night is what got me thinking I should do a quick video and just point it out, because you're sort of in the moment. Like we're literally watching it play out now. What happens when teams don't manage their cap that way? And listen, the Bills put together a really good team. They made a run. It's not like they were reckless and spent a bunch of stupid money. They just ran up against the cap because they spent a lot of money on some really good players, which the Jets are going to have soon. Listen, JJ, Sauce, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, like these guys are all coming up in the next year or two. If not, we'll get into that, whether they demand new deals next offseason. We'll see about that. But the Jets are going to be in the spot, because they'll have Quinnen's money. Aaron Rodgers, whether he's here or not, a ton of his money is still going to be on the cap. So the Jets aren't very far away from a nightmare cap scenario, which is kind of why I've outlined why I think the Bryce Huff thing wasn't going to happen. Again, not because I don't like Huff, but at some point they've got to, Michael Carter at corner. Yes, he's a nickel that don't make premium money, but he's going to make premium nickel money. So maybe he's an $8 or $9 million guy. So that's those 5 guys, right? If you look at Breece, if you look at Sauce, if you look at Carter, if you look at Garrett, if you look at JJ, most of those guys are going to be $25 million a year guys, with the way the cap is going up and salaries are increasing. So the Jets are going to be up against it. I had a conversation a few minutes ago on Twitter. This really surprised me, so I'm only throwing this out there because I don't know how many people don't know it. It's not really a new thing, but it wasn't always this way. So there are some fans who don't understand it. Carrying cap space forward. One of the reasons why, if you remember, I talked about how last offseason, funny enough, the day before the Jets signed Dalvin Cook, I had kind of said, they shouldn't be going after Dalvin Cook. Like, walk away from it. There was a time where I said, sure, bring him in. And then after watching more of his film last year and reading up on how bad he really was, I was like, you know what? Jets should walk away. Of course, they signed him the following morning. And even though I didn't absolutely hate the signing itself, I absolutely hated how much money they gave him. 7-8 million, whatever, however much they ended up giving him. The way the NFL works it now is that if you don't spend cap money, right? Like, say hypothetically the Jets have this 20 million. Let's say for some reason they didn't spend any. They enter this season with 20 million. They don't spend any more during the season. The season ends. They've still got 20 million. It carries over to the next year. And instead of having whatever they're projected, instead of having what they would have if they spent this offseason, they would have that. They would have next year's money plus the 20 from this year they didn't spend. So when you hear myself, there haven't been a lot of people, but I know myself and some others were critical of the Cook signing because we were saying you're now spending money on Dalvin Cook that you would have been able to carry forward to next year and spend it on other players who are more useful than Dalvin Cook. And I had the conversation on Twitter, and it's like it's two people, but I dealt with it when the signing happened a couple times during the season. People, that money's that's 2024 cap. Why do you care? This is 2023. Money carries forward that you don't spend. So say the Jets sign a guy tomorrow. Well, that won't happen. Well, you could sign a street guy. Anyone, say you sign a guy tomorrow to 10 million a year. Then next year, that guy's contract expires, he leaves, and that money is gone. If you didn't sign that guy, you would have that extra 10 million to spend. I don't feel like it's a hard concept, but a surprising number of people seem to not be aware of this. So I'm just putting it out there, to say like that's why fans don't like to see their team throw money away. Which brings me to the other piece of it, because I hear this every offseason. And it was actually funny. A few months ago, somebody I really respect had this take, and I literally hung up the phone. I was like, conversation's over. I didn't know you were one of those people. People who ask fans why they're acting like Woody's money is their money. Nobody, literally, nobody, zero, no people are acting like Woody's money is their money. When people are suggesting the team be financially responsible, it's because they want the cap to be well managed so that when you move forward, you have more money than you would have if you had wasted it. Like, fans know the money's not theirs, but I am a fan of the team, and whether I like the coach or the GM or none of that matters. I should be wanting the team to have as many resources at their disposal as possible when they enter an off season. So when somebody says you overspent on that guy, nobody's feeling sorry. I promise you, nobody is feeling sorry for Woody Johnson spending his money. I don't care a lick about what he's spending on. As long as he's providing money for the GM to sign players. And the more money you have, the more options you have. So going into the offseason with more money, again, I feel like this should be pretty basic. Going into an offseason with more money is better than going to an offseason with less money. So the next time you hear a fan say, "Oh my God, why did they pay him so much? Why did they overpay that guy?" It's because they feel like the player could have been had for less, and that would have left more money for more players. Or for, listen, we talk about it all the time when we discuss the cap. Teams like to have 4, 5, 6, 7 million in cap space when they enter the year in case of an injury and they have an opportunity, or even if there's not an injury, even if a player they really like becomes available in trade, and like the trade's going to happen tomorrow, you need that cap space. It means you don't have to cut another player. You can say, all right, we're able to make this deal with minimal transactions on the back end because we left enough cap space. We left enough wiggle room when we entered the offseason. So teams like to have some cap space when they start the season. People don't like to spend every single penny, because then if you need an emergency move, or again, if a player you really like, your team calls you up and says, "Hey, we know you love this dude. Things aren't working out for him. We're willing to deal him. What do you want to do?" And you're like, "Damn it, that guy makes 11 million a year and we're up against the cap. We got to make a bunch of moves." Versus, "Oh, okay, well, we got 7 million in space. We can rework one or two guys and we'll get there." So look at salary caps before the season starts. You'll see most teams have some breathing room under the cap. So I don't care about Woody Johnson's money and what he spends it on, as long as he's allowing the GM to spend what he wants to spend on players. And if I'm complaining, I say me, if I or anyone sit there and complain about the amount of money they're spending, it's because we believe they've spent the money on a guy, or too much money on a guy, that they could have saved some at the back end. I don't know. I get that I just repeated that twice, but for years I've been having this conversation, literally years, and I see it every single offseason. People who don't understand, and again, I'm not a cap guru, but I know more money is better than less money. And if someone's complaining about it, that's why. It's not because we care about Woody Johnson's money. It's not that we think the money is ours. I've been a fan for 40, well, close to 40 years. Haven't gotten a check yet. I'm pretty well established that it ain't my money. But me wanting the Jets to spend responsibly doesn't mean I believe it. It's sort of a dumb reply when you don't have a good answer. Like someone makes a good point and says, "Oh my God, they just paid Dalvin Cook 6, 7, 8 million, whatever the actual number was. They just paid Dalvin Cook 8 million, and he's washed." And he is washed, and it was even when I thought he would be solid. I didn't think he would be great. I didn't think he would be great, but I also didn't think he'd be useless. But even when you say that, and the response from these fans is, "It's not your money," that doesn't mean I want them spent. Listen, put it this way: we all want Thomas Morstead back, right? Everybody loves Thomas Morstead. He had a great year last year, a million punts inside the 10, the 5. He was phenomenal. If the Jets announce tomorrow that they've re-signed Thomas Morstead to a $40 million a year deal, and I'm directing this at the "it's not your money" people, wouldn't you have something to say about that? Wouldn't you be like, "Oh, that sounds like a really bad idea"? Like, why did they just sign a punter to $40 million a year? Is that your money? Why are you worried about it? You see? You get what I'm saying here? Poor allocation of resources, poor allocation of your financial resources in a business where you're limited on how much you can spend can really hamstring a team, can really put you in a bad spot. So, short one tonight, not a ton to say. Just wanted to kind of go over how much the Jets have, 20-ish million, 20, 23, whatever the number is. We went over the big names that they can, guys they can let go, restructure, whatever it may be, and just try to help people understand a little bit. Nobody cares about Woody's money. We care about the team spending responsibly and putting themselves in position to succeed. And again, more money, better than less money. Have a good one, Jets fans.